My name is Natalie Williams. I'm 28 years old, and as I gripped the steering wheel on the drive back to my childhood home, my palms were slick with sweat. 5 years away, and now I was returning not just as the daughter they underestimated, but as a colonel in the United States Army. The insignia stayed zipped inside my bag for now. Let them underestimate me one more time. Tomorrow, everything would change. I pulled into the same cracked driveway in small town Montana, took a breath, and stepped out. The house looked exactly as I remembered, like time had never touched it. Before I dive deeper into what happened, drop your location in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button. If your family has ever doubted you, this story's going to hit hard. The moment I walked inside, it hit me nothing had changed. Same faded photos on the wall, same floral couch that sagged in the middle, and the same air, heavy with judgment and unspoken comparisons. My mother's voice floated from the kitchen, distant but familiar. "Natalie, you made it." No hug, no greeting at the door, just that usual undertone of restrained disappointment. I wandered the house in silence, brushing my fingers along familiar surfaces. My father, Albert, had spent 3 decades climbing the corporate ladder at Pinnacle Defense Systems. The family had always revolved around his career, and my brother Gregory was groomed to follow in his footsteps. Me? I was the girl who threw it all away by choosing the military over business school. He just got promoted again, my mother chirped as I walked into the kitchen. "Senior project manager now. Isn't that wonderful?" "That's great," I said, voice flat from years of rehearsing politeness. She continued chattering about Gregory and his wife Megan, their new home, his rising position, their perfect little lives. She never once asked about mine. I escaped upstairs. My old bedroom was a shrine to who I was before I disappointed them. Cheerleading trophies, college acceptance letters, honor roll awards, all untouched, all frozen in time, but no sign of who I became. No photos of my commissioning, no awards for service, no articles or shadow boxes, as if my military career didn't exist at all. I sat on the bed and remembered the night I told them I accepted the ROTC scholarship. My father's face, tight with disapproval, still haunted me. "The military is for people without options, Natalie," he had said. "You're smarter than that." I opened my suitcase and unzipped the garment bag. Inside was my dress uniform, carefully pressed. Tomorrow, Pinnacle would host its annual leadership conference. My father had proudly mentioned the CEO, Shannon Murphy, was flying in. What he didn't know, I'm the military liaison overseeing the $1.2 billion contract between the Army and Pinnacle. At 28, I'm one of the youngest colonels in Army cyber defense, the exact division Pinnacle works with. The authority Gregory thinks he has, I outrank it, quietly, completely. I hung the uniform behind old clothes in the closet. One more dinner to endure, one more evening of being overlooked. Then everything would change. The doorbell rang. Gregory had arrived. I braced myself and headed downstairs. Dinner was cramped not just from the bodies around the table but the egos in the room. Gregory and Megan, polished and proud. Tiffany, our cousin, the golden finance exec. And me, the background character in my own family. "Natalie, you remember Tiffany?" Mom said, as if we hadn't grown up side by side. She just closed a huge deal for her bank. "Hi, Tiffany," I said warmly. She'd always been kind even if she didn't understand my path. "It's good to see you, Nat," she replied, offering a real smile. As we served food, Gregory launched into his moment. "Dad, I wanted to tell you about the new project I'm heading," he said proudly. "Shannon Murphy herself picked me." My father beamed. "That's my boy. She doesn't hand out responsibility lightly." Gregory's eyes flicked to me. "It's the same project you've been on for years." Shannon said my perspective might finally get it moving. I took a sip of water. The irony? That contract is under my authority now. His project? I'm the one who signs off on its next phase. But I stayed quiet. Let them talk. 12 direct reports, Gregory bragged. Even 2 senior engineers under me now. They pushed back at first, but my results changed their minds. "That's wonderful," my mother gushed. Then she turned to me with a paper-thin smile. "How's your job going? Still the same rank? Job, not career." I noticed. "Things are going well," I said, keeping my tone even. "Still, a captain or something?" my father added. I stabbed at my potatoes. "Something like that." "Oh, by the way," Mom said, "Tiffany just bought a condo downtown. 3 bedrooms, mountain views. Can you believe it? Tiffany looked embarrassed. It's not a big deal. Right place, right time. But my mother pressed on. It's good to see young people settling down, building equity, not just moving every few years. I'd lived in for states and to countries. To her, that meant instability, not experience. Speaking of tomorrow, my father interrupted. The CEO is visiting our branch, Shannon Murphy. It's a huge deal. Yeah, Gregory added. She even emailed me about my innovation proposal. Is anything special planned for the visit? I asked casually. My father nodded. I smiled quietly. Tomorrow, they'd find out exactly who I am. Full staff meeting, project reviews, and some special announcement about the military contract, my father said, swirling his wine glass. Apparently a colonel is coming as the Pentagon liaison. Gregory scoffed. Doubt it's really a colonel. Probably just some major who'll nod politely and be dazzled by our operation. I fought to suppress a smile. That sounds interesting, I said calmly. Not really. Gregory smirked. Military types never get it. They follow orders, check boxes, and think discipline equals intelligence. Gregory, Tiffany said sharply, her frown unmistakable. That's not fair. But he wasn't finished. Come on, we all know the truth. The military's what people do when they can't make it in the real world. Ranks and regulations make it look impressive, but it's just structured mediocrity. My mother nodded, ever the quiet chorus to his arrogance. We always knew you were so bright, Natalie. That's why it hurt when you chose that path. I tilted my head, voice steady. What exactly do you think I do in the army? My father shrugged. Push papers. Keep things in line. Important, sure, but not challenging. Not for someone like you. You could have run your own company by now. You'll still be taking orders 10 years from now, Gregory added, laughing, while I'm running a division. The words shouldn't have stung, but they did. Even after years of accomplishments, deployments, and a silver eagle on my collar, it still bruised something deep. A wound that never quite healed. I think Natalie made a choice that works for her, Tiffany offered gently. A waste. My mother sighed, ignoring her. All that promise. Remember how your teachers said you'd be CEO one day? I pushed food around my plate as the conversation shifted. They moved on without missing a beat. Gregory's upcoming trip to Hawaii, Megan's latest promotion at her law firm, Tiffany's expanding investment portfolio. No one asked about my last deployment, or the elite cyber training I'd just completed, or the Pentagon commendation. Later, as dessert arrived, my father leaned back. Tomorrow's big. Shannon's visit could finally mean a VP title for me. I've put in 28 years at Pinnacle. This contract might be the key. I nodded slowly, lips sealed. They had no idea. Not yet. That night, I lay in my childhood bed, listening to the creaks and hums of the house around me. From the hallway, voices still floated through. He's exceptional, my mother said softly. Shannon would be smart to see that. I rolled onto my back, fingers brushing the colonel insignia I'd tucked into my bag. I stared up at the glow-in-the-dark stars still clinging to the ceiling, relics from when my potential had meant something different. Before Gregory joined Pinnacle, before I joined ROTC, before I stopped being the daughter they wanted, I remembered the moment everything changed. Sophomore year, I'd brought home a brochure. ROTC, full tuition, a real path, a calling. The military? My father had said, like I'd confessed a crime. That's for people who can't get real jobs. It is a real job, I had answered, and it's what I want. My mother looked stricken. But what about business school or law school? You always said no. I realized even then. They always said. When I chose ROTC, the subtle erasure began. Achievements ignored. My commissioning as second lieutenant. Only Tiffany came. My parents had urgent work obligations. Yet my father had Gregory's junior analyst promotion framed and hung in his office. My official military portrait, tucked in a drawer. Still, I rose. At 23, I was captain, assigned to a cyber defense unit where I uncovered a threat others missed. A threat that could have compromised classified military infrastructure. That discovery earned me a promotion to major by 26. It was Captain Eleanor Grant, now Brigadier General, who first saw what my parents never did. Williams, she'd said after a brutal exercise, you think differently. That'll take you far. She was right. A security audit I'd expanded revealed patterns pointing to a coordinated digital breach attempt. I led the investigation and we stopped the threat cold. That operation earned me my lieutenant colonel rank. Early, and eventually, the Pentagon came calling. When Eleanor, my mentor and champion, pinned the silver eagle of colonel to my uniform 3 weeks ago, it was in front of top brass, generals, and agency heads, not my family. I hadn't even told them. Why would I? Colonel Williams, she'd said afterward, pride in her voice, you just became the youngest colonel in Cyber Command history. I knew what it meant, but tomorrow, my family would finally see. The Pinnacle contract is no ordinary deal. $1, $2 billion for next-gen military cybersecurity systems. And I, Colonel Natalie Williams, was appointed the Army liaison. Every major decision, specification, and approval comes through me. In a twist worthy of irony, I would be overseeing my father's project, Gregory's too. The same people who dismissed my career now depended on it. I got up and carefully unzipped the garment bag. My uniform shimmered in the low light. The medals, the ribbons, the crisp, midnight blue fabric. My fingers brushed the eagle insignia. On the collar, the very symbol my father once said meant nothing in the real world. He was wrong. I examined every thread and button with precision, calming myself through ritual. By dawn, I was ready. The uniform hung with purpose. My hair was regulation tight, my stance firm. No longer the insecure girl from this house. Today, Colonel Natalie Williams would step into the room, not the daughter they dismissed. I glanced at my watch, a gift from General Eleanor. Time to report. Downstairs, I heard them preparing to leave for the event. They didn't know I'd be there. They certainly didn't know in what capacity. I waited until I heard their cars back out of the driveway and fade into the distance. Only then did I head downstairs, keys in hand, and step into the morning light. The drive to Pinnacle Defense Systems took just under 15 minutes, enough time to center myself. I mentally reviewed the critical points I'd be addressing in today's presentation. This wasn't just about proving a point to my family. It was about national security, oversight, and ensuring the $1, $2 billion cyber defense contract received the leadership it demanded. As I pulled into the reserved parking spot marked Military Liaison, I turned off the engine and took one last breath. I adjusted my uniform, brushing invisible creases from the midnight blue fabric. The silver eagle insignia on my collar glinted in the sun. This was the weight I had chosen, the weight I had earned, and it sat far more comfortably on my shoulders than the burden of unmet family expectations ever had. Time to lead. The Pinnacle Defense Systems headquarters stood ahead, sleek glass and steel rising into the Montana sky. It was a monument to corporate ambition and defense innovation. Somewhere inside, the very systems I now oversaw were being developed, technology that would protect American lives. Security at the entrance was tight as expected. I approached the front checkpoint, my boots clicking steadily against the polished pavement. 2 uniformed guards stood at attention the moment they noticed my approach. "Good morning, Colonel," the first said, eyes immediately drawn to the insignia on my shoulder. "May I see your ID?" I handed over my military identification. An official clearance. Natalie Williams, Pentagon Liaison, Project Aegis. His brows lifted slightly as he scanned the credentials. "Yes, ma'am. You're expected in the main conference room. Would you like an escort?" "That won't be necessary," I replied smoothly. "I know where I'm going." And I did. I'd memorized the building's layout days ago, right down to the placement of the executive offices and the angles of the boardroom entrances. Preparation was second nature to me now, not just a habit, but a principle. As I stepped through the final security gate, the energy shifted. Conversations slowed. Heads turned. A colonel, especially one this young, was a rare sight. In a regional facility like this, some employees nodded respectfully. Others stared, unsure whether to make eye contact or look away. I kept my expression neutral and my stride measured, fully aware of the impression I was making. I wasn't here for a reunion. I was here to do my job. The elevator glided to a stop on the executive floor, and the doors parted with a soft chime. Stepping out, I came face to face with Gregory. He was hunched over his tablet reviewing notes. His eyes lifted briefly and then widened. "Natalie?" he blurted. "What are you doing here? And why are you wearing that?" His gaze dropped to the silver eagle on my uniform, recognition dawning and with it, alarm. "Good morning, Gregory," I said, voice crisp and composed. "I'm here for the project review." Before he could speak, our father turned the corner, mid-conversation with 2 executives. His words trailed off the moment he saw me. Surprise flickered across his face, then confusion, then something closer to panic. "Natalie, why are you in uniform?" he asked, eyes darting toward the others. "What's going on?" "Morning, Dad." I nodded politely. "I'm heading into the conference room to prepare. The meeting begins in 20 minutes, yes?" One of the executives flanking him, Barbara Jenkins, legal, according to her badge, stepped forward. "Colonel, it's an honor to have you here. We weren't informed you'd be attending in person." My father went pale. "Colonel Natalie, what is this?" I held my professional tone. "I believe CEO Murphy will clarify during the meeting. If you'll excuse me." As I walked away, whispers ignited in my wake. Years of training had taught me to steady my breath, walk with purpose, ignore distraction. Still, I couldn't help the small, quiet satisfaction rising in my chest. The conference room was already bustling, staff laying out documents and refreshments. A young woman arranging water pitchers gasped and nearly dropped one when she saw me. "Oh, Colonel, I'm so sorry. We weren't told you'd be here in person. Can I get you anything? Adjust the setup?" "No need," I said with a polite smile. "Everything looks great." I took my seat at the head of the table where the placard read Military Liaison, Reserved. One by one, Pinnacle executives filed in. Some offered handshakes and introduced themselves, others simply nodded with deference. A few remarked that they'd expected me via video call, not in person. My father and Gregory entered together, their confidence visibly rattled. They sat far from me, glancing in my direction with thinly veiled confusion. I didn't return the look. At precisely 9 o'clock a.m., the door opened. Shannon Murphy strode in, flanked by her executive team. Shannon had a reputation for brilliance and steel. Under her leadership, Pinnacle had become a powerhouse. Conversations quieted instantly. She scanned the room, then paused when she saw me. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, followed by a smile. She turned and headed straight toward me. "Colonel Williams," she said warmly, extending her hand. "What a surprise. I thought we were scheduled for a virtual briefing." "I was in town visiting family," I replied, rising to greet her. "I thought it would be more productive to review things in person." "Excellent initiative," Shannon said. "Your presence will be invaluable today." Then she addressed the room. "For anyone unaware, Colonel Williams is the Pentagon liaison for Project Aegis. She holds final approval over all security specifications and implementation plans." I saw my father's jaw go slack. Gregory stared like he was looking at a stranger. "Colonel," Shannon said with a respectful nod, "we're honored to have you here." The meeting began with project updates. Every team lead presented to Shannon and to me. I asked sharp, targeted questions. I offered feedback drawn from real-world combat scenarios and cybersecurity field expertise. My father looked stunned. Gregory was visibly sweating. When it came time for his presentation, his confidence cracked. "As team lead for UI integration, I've developed a streamlined approach to enhance." His eyes met mine. He faltered. "Please continue, Mr. Williams," I said, neutral and professional, addressing him as I would any other prisoner. He stumbled through the rest, his words halting. I asked 3 follow-up questions. They exposed critical gaps in his strategy. Not to humiliate him, but because national security demanded thoroughness. "These items must be resolved before we approve this phase," I concluded. "Submit revised documentation by Friday." The silence in the room was thick. My father sat rigid, watching the dynamic he never imagined, his son answering to the daughter he dismissed. By the time Shannon closed the meeting 3 hours later, the balance of power had irrevocably shifted. "Colonel Williams will remain on site through tomorrow," she announced. "Provide her with whatever she needs. This project is not just vital to our company, it's vital to the country." As people began to leave, Shannon came over again. "Colonel, your reputation is clearly well earned. General Grant has spoken highly of you, but seeing you today confirms it." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my father lingering nearby, visibly uneasy. Gregory stood beside him, no longer brimming with superiority, but quietly processing a reality he hadn't imagined possible. Shannon gestured for me to join a small circle of senior execs. "Let me properly introduce you to the team," she said, placing a respectful hand on my shoulder. "Everyone, this is Colonel Natalie Williams, the Pentagon's lead liaison on Project Aegis. Her work has directly shaped the security architecture we're implementing." The senior VP of Engineering, Thomas Bailey, extended a hand. "Colonel, Your paper on quantum countermeasures was exceptional. We've already implemented portions of your framework. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I appreciate that, I said, very aware of my father and brother watching from just feet away. Then Shannon turned, and of course, you know Albert Williams, Director of Regional Operations. Albert's been with Pinnacle for almost 30 years. A strange pause. Recognition bloomed among the execs. She glanced between us. Williams, are you two related? My father stepped forward before I could respond. She's my daughter, he said, his voice quiet, weighted. There was something new in it. Was it respect? My daughter is Colonel Williams. Shannon blinked. You're her father? Albert, you never mentioned your daughter was the Colonel Williams, the one overseeing this contract. I didn't know, he admitted, his voice hollow. I wasn't aware of her current role. Shannon looked to me, seeking clarification. I met her gaze evenly. My family and I haven't had many conversations about my career in recent years. Gregory finally stepped forward, his disbelief spilling over. You can't be serious. You're the colonel? The one in charge of all this? Yes, I said calmly. I've been overseeing Project Aegis for 6 months since my promotion to full colonel. 6 months? My father repeated numbly. Shannon, sensing the awkwardness, redirected. Colonel, since you're here in person, perhaps you'd walk the team through your oversight approach. Of course. I stepped forward, activated the screen, and began my briefing. Project Aegis represents a $1.2 billion initiative to develop next-gen cybersecurity infrastructure for the U.S. military. My role is to ensure all developments meet Pentagon requirements and pass secure integration protocols. As I spoke, the room grew focused, silent, but intensely attentive. I laid out frameworks, timelines, risks, and milestones with clear authority. All staffing, technical decisions, and budgetary phases must receive my sign-off, I concluded. That includes current leadership on all subteams. Across the room, Gregory went pale. Shannon gave a small, approving nod. We're fortunate to have Colonel Williams guiding this effort. Her leadership ensures our work is not only innovative but secure. The room nodded in agreement, and my father, silent, stunned, could no longer deny who I was. In fact, Shannon added, Colonel Williams will be conducting performance evaluations of all team leads over the next 2 days to assess progress and resource allocation. Across the table, Gregory's face drained of color. Less than 24 hours ago, he'd laughed about my so-called directionless career. Now, I would be reviewing his performance. As the meeting broke up, Shannon stepped closer, lowering her voice. Colonel, I had no idea Albert was your father. This must be a proud day for your family. I gave a diplomatic smile. It's certainly a significant one. Well, they should be proud. Your work has been exemplary. I've told Albert more than once how fortunate we are to have such a strong military partner on this project. My father approached just in time to hear that. His expression was muddled confusion tangled with something that looked suspiciously like regret. Natalie, he began, hesitating, uncertain now how to address me. We need to talk. Of course, I replied professionally. I have a brief meeting with the security team. I can meet you in your office at 1100 hours. He nodded quietly, accepting direction from the daughter he used to dismiss. As the executives filed out, I overheard the murmur of surprise. Did you know Albert's daughter was Colonel Williams? No wonder she rose so fast with connections like that. Actually, Thomas Bailey's voice cut through. She refused any family tie. Everything she earned on merit. That last comment landed hard. My father froze mid-step. The truth had started to take root. I hadn't succeeded because of them. I had succeeded in spite of their absence. At exactly 1100 hours, I knocked on the frosted glass door to my father's office. Through it, I saw not only him but also my mother and Gregory. Someone had clearly called in reinforcements. Enter, my father called. His voice lacked the commanding timbre I'd grown up with. I stepped in, still in full uniform, and closed the door behind me. My mother, Diana, perched tensely on the edge of a chair, her expression flickering between confusion and fear. Gregory stood by the window, arms crossed like a wall. Please sit, my father said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Thank you, but I prefer to stand, I replied automatically, sliding into parade rest, hands clasped behind my back. The silence was thick until he finally spoke. Why didn't you tell us? All this time, we thought. You thought I was wasting my potential, I said calmly. That I'd disappear into a second-rate military desk job. That I couldn't handle real competition. Neither raised their voice, but the weight of the history behind mine was undeniable. We didn't know, my mother said quickly. You never told us. I did tell you, I replied. I sent invitations to every promotion ceremony. I called after new assignments. I even emailed articles when they were cleared for public release. But a colonel, my father repeated, like the word itself didn't compute. That's a very high rank. Yes, I said, roughly equivalent to a corporate vice president. That comparison landed both my father and Gregory sat up a little straighter. You have authority over our contract? Gregory asked, almost accusatory. Is that why you came back? To humiliate me in front of Shannon? I came back because it's been 5 years, and despite everything, you're still my family, I said. The timing? Coincidental. Convenient, sure, but not planned. Convenient? My father echoed sharply. You show up at my workplace in uniform? What do you think that looks like? People will assume nepotism. That made me laugh. Dad, I've spent my entire career avoiding any link to Pinnacle. I was assigned to this project by General Grant because of my work with adaptive cybersecurity systems, not because of you. General Grant? My mother asked. My commanding officer and mentor, I said. She's been everything you could have been: supportive, honest, proud. My mother flinched. The words hit home. So this was about showing us up, Gregory said bitterly. Making us look stupid for not believing in you. No, I said firmly. This is about doing the job I've spent 14 years training for. The fact that you didn't take it seriously is your problem, not mine. My father rose from his chair, anger finally replacing his shock. You could have warned us. You let us believe you were some junior officer pushing papers. Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. When have any of you asked about my work, my life? Not once last night did you ask a single question. It was all about Gregory's promotion, Tiffany's condo. Silence again, heavy this time. We always wanted what was best for you, my mother whispered. No, I said gently. You wanted what you thought was best. When I chose something different, you dismissed it. Dismissed me. My father sat heavily. His anger had burned off, only weariness remained. Your brother followed the plan. He's done well. I'm happy for Gregory, I replied sincerely. But that path wasn't mine. I needed something else. Gregory uncrossed his arms. His posture softened. All these years we thought you were stuck, he said, quietly, that you were going nowhere. I know what you thought. You've made it clear, every time we spoke. Last night, you literally said I'd never be anything in the military. He looked down. I didn't know. You never asked, I said. My mother stood awkwardly. Well, now we know. And we are proud, very proud. I always said the military was respectable. Mom, I said gently, please don't rewrite history. It ruins any chance we have at real reconciliation. She closed her mouth, unused to being contradicted. Natalie, my father said, finally using my name instead of my rank for the first time since the meeting. What do you want? An apology? Public praise? All I've ever wanted, I said simply, is respect. For my choices. For the path I chose. That it matters, even if you don't understand it. Silence again. And then he stood. For a moment, I thought he might try to hug me. Instead, he extended his hand. Colonel Williams, he said, voice thick with emotion. I owe you a serious apology. I dismissed your career out of ignorance. I was wrong. I accepted the handshake. Thank you, Dad. I still don't understand everything you do, he added, but I'd like to learn if you're willing to teach me. That, more than anything, meant the world. I'd like that. My mother stepped forward, clumsy in her vulnerability. We should have come to your ceremonies, she said. I would have liked to see you recognized. I nodded. Thank you. Gregory, still by the window, finally spoke. So, you outranked me by a lot. This isn't a competition, Greg. It always was, he admitted. Mom and Dad made it one. I just followed the path they approved of. It was the most honest thing he'd said in years. We chose different paths, I said. Both can have value. He nodded. For what it's worth, watching you today, I couldn't do what you do. The knowledge, the presence, it was impressive. Coming from him, that was everything. Thank you. My father cleared his throat. Shannon wants us all at dinner tonight. Now that She knows we're family. She's very impressed with you, Natalie. I know, I replied, allowing myself the smallest smile. Of course you do, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. You probably know more about this company than I do. Only the classified parts, I said, and he actually laughed for the first time in years. The tension had shifted, not erased, but reshaped into something hopeful. I've got another meeting, I said, checking my watch, but I'd be happy to join you all for dinner. As I turned to leave, my mother called out softly, Natalie, I know, Mom, I said gently, one step at a time. I closed the door behind me. Gregory and Megan arrived last, carrying an expensive bottle of wine. Of all the changes over the past 6 months, his transformation surprised me the most. Once the initial shock of my role had worn off, he had approached me not with sarcasm or competition but with genuine curiosity. So, he began as we sat in the living room before dinner. I implemented those security protocols you suggested last month. The team thought I was a genius. I raised an eyebrow. Did you give credit where it was due? He grinned, sheepish. Eventually, after enjoying the applause for about 5 minutes. But seriously, the rollout went smoothly. The clients thrilled. Good work, I said, and meant it. Your team executes well. That simple professional recognition meant more to him now than any childhood praise ever had. Somewhere along the line, he'd stopped seeing me as just his little sister and started seeing me as a peer. From across the room, my father was studying the modest row of military awards on my bookshelf. He turned to me slowly. I read that article about the cyber attack you helped prevent last year, he said. I didn't understand all the technical parts, but it sounded serious. It was, I confirmed. We caught it early, fortunately. Lives were at stake? He asked, his voice more tentative than I'd ever heard it. Potentially, yes. Infrastructure security touches everything from hospitals to air traffic control. He nodded, the reality settling in. I always thought military service meant combat boots and battlefields. I never imagined this. Most people don't, I said gently, which is exactly why it works. The enemy doesn't always see us coming. Just then, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, General Eleanor Grant stood on the threshold off duty, but still perfectly composed. Her presence brought with it a quiet strength I had relied on more than once. Colonel Williams, she greeted with a warm smile. General, I said, returning it. Thank you for coming. I'd invited Eleanor partly because she was in town, but mostly because I wanted my family to meet the woman who had believed in me long before they ever did. Back in the living room, I introduced her. Everyone, this is Brigadier General Eleanor Grant, my commanding officer and mentor. My father immediately stood, offering his hand with the formality he reserved for powerful executives. General Grant, it's an honor. I understand we have you to thank for recognizing Natalie's potential. Eleanor shook his hand firmly. The potential was always there, Mr. Williams. I just had the privilege of watching it unfold. My mother stepped forward quickly. Please, General, make yourself comfortable. Dinner's almost ready. The evening unfolded more naturally than any family gathering I could remember. Over dinner, Eleanor shared anecdotes from our work, never classified, but illuminating. She described the intensity of our missions, the stakes we faced, and the systems I'd helped create. She designed a simulation program that's now standard training for all cybersecurity personnel, Eleanor mentioned over the main course. Her approach reduced breach rates by over 60% in training environments. I watched my parents absorb this, their eyes wide not with disbelief, but dawning recognition. We didn't know, my mother whispered. All these years, we never really knew what you were doing. You never asked, I said quietly but without bitterness. Now you do. That's what matters. After dinner, Gregory helped me clear the plates while Eleanor and my parents lingered at the table. You know, he said softly, I spent years thinking I was ahead, getting promotions, climbing the ladder, making connections. But you were playing a whole different game, and at a much higher level. It was never a competition, Greg. I know, he admitted, but I made it one. I'm sorry. I nodded. These quiet, honest moments would have been unthinkable half a year ago. The healing wasn't complete, maybe it never would be, but it had begun. Later, as we shared coffee and my mother's apple pie, my father lifted his glass. To Colonel Natalie Williams, he said, pride unmistakable in his voice, who reminded us all that walking your own path can lead to extraordinary places. We may have been late in seeing it, but we couldn't be prouder now. I raised my glass with the others, feeling something I hadn't in years. Peace. I no longer needed their validation to feel whole. I had forged my identity in rooms they never entered, in battles they never saw. But their recognition still meant something. It meant healing. In the end, it was never about proving them wrong. It was always about becoming who I was meant to be, whether they approved or not. And maybe that's the real victory.